I can't believe I finally get to sit with you and chat today, because we've known each other a while, haven't we?
Yes. 6 years.
Oh my goodness.
Hmm.
My goodness.
2017. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
2018.
so.
Yeah.
Craziness. And I've always been a huge admirer of your work and your positive message and energy. You have this beautiful energy that you put out into the world. And I've always just kind of, been in awe of what you do. And it was funny, you put out a reel on Saturday on Instagram, and I was there with my cup of tea, scrolling, and there was just something about it. And I was just like, oh, I have to reach out to Dillan. And here we are. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah. Thank you for the invite. It was very perfect timing.
Oh, excellent. Well, I reached out because I was like, you know what? I've been wanting to tackle the subject of change, I guess, on the podcast for a while. And I couldn't think of a better person to talk to about change than you. Because change, it's not easy, is it? And that's something I know that it's a lived experience for you, and it's something you help your clients with and your friends with. And so certainly when you go through burnout and after that initial rest and you start to kind of walk that path of recovery, a lot of change happens, Dillan, a lot. And you just, I was certainly never prepared for that. And so I guess to start us off, how do you help people even look change in the eye?
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think what I've learned about change is how we have such different relationships to change that we choose versus changes that we don't. And then even changes that we choose, we go into it thinking, having a certain expectation. And when it doesn't go that way, then we're put into the situation like we would be if we hadn't chosen it. Because now we're dealing with the unexpected.
Yes.
That makes sense, right? So, and that's happened to me so many times where I made intentional choices and some went really well. And then I made others kind of naively thinking they were going to be fine, and then they weren't fine. So I just started to learn this incredible ability to just adapt.
Yeah.
And that's what I help people do, is first decide, because sometimes my clients will come to me and they think they know what they want to do and they are afraid. So they need support with everywhere from figuring out the logistics to then getting the courage and the confidence to do it. And then sometimes they come and they don't even know what it is that they want to do. They just feel something inside that just feels not right, like they don't feel comfortable doing. So it kind of ranges. So I really start by just listening to them and hearing where they are. I've had clients come telling me that they want to do one thing, and then 4 sessions in, they kind of say, actually, surprise, I really need help with this, which is either that they didn't feel comfortable telling me at first, or it maybe wasn't even in their consciousness. Just from talking to me, it came to the surface. So there was a lot there about change.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I have definitely been in that position where I have either it's been a self-reflection thing where I've sat with my journal, or I've actually spoken with my coach. And I have done the same, where I've gone, okay, I think this is what I need to do, but actually it's not that. It's actually, if I write a list, say there were 5 things I need to do, the one thing I actually need to do is right on the bottom of the list.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just, sometimes you don't know, do you? It's not an easy journey.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. And people fear it so much. And I love change. I love change that I choose, meaning I'm predisposed to it. Like I get restless doing with any kind of monotony at all. And so I seek out change. And in fact, I went through a phase where I was doing it too much. I was causing myself too much chaos in my life because I was changing too much at once, but I love it. And I think that's what helps me help people who have so much fear about changing.
Right.
But then changes that I don't choose, I don't like that very much. And I have a very hard time actually dealing with changes that happen that weren't my choice, which is ironic.
Yeah, but then surely that just makes you human.
True.
Like when you think about it, we're so hardwired, aren't we, for safety and to be part of that tribe and to stay kind of safe and secure. But often when you kind of really tap in and tune into yourself and you think, oh, I've got a purpose here with my life, and I really want to use this the best I can, then actually staying safe and secure isn't part of the deal, is it?
It's not. It's
Yeah.
really not. And I wouldn't yeah, you said that so well. I've been initiating certain changes in my life were some of like the most difficult, painful experiences, like you said. But I can see now in hindsight's so great, isn't it? That's so clear. That it absolutely had to go exactly the way that it did for me to become who I am today, for myself and for other people. And so it's like impossible to have any regrets, really.
Yes, exactly. But
Mhm.
I also understand that when you're in the middle and you're walking through that mud, oh my gosh, it's so hard to kind of see the silver linings, the good stuff, the glimmers. You
Yeah.
just kind of think, oh, why did I do this?
Right. Totally. Right. Yeah. Self-doubt. Exactly. Questioning yourself, all of that stuff. And I think that's the stuff that people fear. They're afraid of that happening. So then they don't initiate changes because they fear that phase, which is just inevitable. It totally is. If
Yeah,
you're really gonna get to the next level, you have to go through that mud, like you said.
yeah. So how do we get over that fear?
Hmm.
It's tricky, I know.
Um, I don't know. I think people act. I don't know that you can. I don't think that you ever just say, okay, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm going to start. I think the best practice is to just start and to do it afraid.
Yes.
And to just do it afraid and to trust. And I think people either decide that they will do that or they decide they never will. And they just stay stuck because the familiarity, I say not comfort. We say like the comfort, but rarely is staying stuck ever comfortable, but it's familiar. And people would rather stay with what's familiar than deal with the unknown.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know from my lived experience, I have definitely been in a situation where I pushed myself, but it's almost like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, it's my cat. He's just come through the door. He's just been to the vet. So he's going to feel very sorry for himself. He's just going to hide now. All right, Winston, he's good. So yeah, I know that feeling of where actually, you know what? Let's face it, I just did it 2 weeks ago. This is very real and raw for me, where I thought, okay, sleeves up, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. I could do the easy option, but I'm going to go with this because it feels right. And it's almost like the action breeds the confidence, isn't it?
Yes.
As soon as we
Yes.
take that action, whether we choose to believe, I'm quite spiritual, so I tend to kind of go down the road of, okay, if I jump, then hopefully the universe will catch me. But whether it's that action breeds confidence, doesn't it?
It does. Because absolutely. And because also no matter the result, let's say the result, you fall on your face, right? Or you try something, it totally doesn't work. You always can say, at least I tried.
Wow.
So you can always be proud of yourself that you were afraid, but you tried anyway, which then no matter how it goes, you still now have confidence to try again, try something else. because now you're on your own side.
Oh, I love that. Now you're on your own side. Oh,
No matter how it goes. So it's like a win-win, and I think that's what I started to realize over time is that if, as long as I was on my own side, whatever happened, and I was taking care of myself and I was happy with my effort,
okay.
then the results, I, like you, totally spiritual, totally trusted that whatever didn't happen wasn't meant to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just, had the wrong idea. So then you do develop a trust over time. I wish I could say the trust stays because I lose my faith so many times, which is then what gets into spiraling and negative mood and all of that stuff, because I get disconnected from that faith that's best for me. And so that's just a constant practice for me.
Yeah, you're right. It's that constant practice and having it at the forefront of your mission for the day, I guess. I'm also the same. I can't help it. I'm quite playful as a person, and I can't help but go to the point of like, yeah, but what if it isn't that way? What if I do it this way? And you're like, oh gosh, I just trusted myself.
I know.
No.
I know.
Yeah.
It's hard to overthink, for sure.
It is, isn't it? It is. No, and you often talk about the better, because obviously you were a health coach, and I remember your message that the better you are physically, health wise, the better you are in approaching your day and approaching challenges and whatever. What are the things that you say to your clients, like, almost non-negotiables for that health foundation?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. When life feels impossible, you can give yourself a whole new baseline with the way that you take care of yourself. Not to say that it then becomes unicorns and rainbows, but you feel better, so it feels more possible, right? It goes from, whereas I can compare before I became a health coach, when my nutrition was horrible, I wasn't exercising enough, I felt no willingness, no willpower at all. So I just try to do, and I do the basics. Some exercise could be a gentle walk. You want to think about what's appropriate for the seasons. What do you have the energy for? And a lot of people will say, I don't have energy for anything. Right. But what's awesome about exercise is that it actually gives you energy. So we're not trying to practice for a marathon. I just, sometimes all I can do is just go around the block, but it's something.
Yeah.
So exercise. Sleep is tricky though, because when you're having a hard time, right, our sleep gets affected. But prioritizing it and saying, I'm just going to put myself to bed, because sleep is like the cheapest and most effective medicine ever. And it's free, right? I mean, you could take naps. I'm a big fan of sleep. Water. So exercise, sleep, and water. If you changed nothing else and you only did those things, you'd have a huge shift. And then nutrition. I mean, and not any kind of crazy diet, but reducing sugar, not taking it out completely, because what joy is that? Like reducing sugar, because sugar totally exacerbates depression and anxiety. But reducing it and really focusing on whole foods, getting your veggies in. And you do over time, you just start to feel better and things just feel more possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's those little steps, because actually a lot of people, when they start to diminish their needs and they abandon themselves, those are the things that go out of the window, aren't they? They're overworking, so they're not sleeping enough, and because of that they're drinking a ton of coffee, so they're not drinking water. And it's very, when I look back at my experience anyway, I definitely think, well, of course I was going to burn out. Of course, I was going to feel awful for that period of time, because I didn't set myself up with those foundational pillars. Yeah.
And it's exactly, to think like that, I know that that's what most people do, but my lifestyle is so regulated now that I just those are the non-negotiables. Like that's nothing else gets in the way of me doing those things to be able to have that resilience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
But
And
you're absolutely right. That's exactly what people cut corners with that stuff. And then yeah, they don't feel so great.
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And when we peel back the layers on that, we're not prioritizing ourselves. We're putting the needs of something else above it, whether that's work or a relationship or whatever. And I think, we're just not raised in a society to, well, certainly my generation, like I'm 46 now, that my generation, we weren't raised to look after ourselves, look at our health. It was just kind of, get on with it. Certainly not look or validate your feelings.
Right. Yeah. Same. I mean, I'm similar age. And exactly. So becoming a health coach completely changed. I was already on this path from high school when I had an eating disorder. That's kind of what started my path.
Okay.
So when I was a teenager, and then yeah, did that for years and then became a coach in 2009.
Wow.
Really, I mean, this has been a lifestyle for most of my life, but I completely agree with you. I look at my peers, and this is very far. Like you said, it's very far. Yeah, exactly. How we
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dylan, your life, I mean, you truly live your life. Like when I think of someone as kind of that brilliant role model for really coming down into the world and living their life to the fullest, you embody that. Because, I think I was talking to someone the other day, actually, and we were just kind of chatting about our lives. And they said, oh, that's kind of what life is. I've just made a series of mistakes and here we are. And I was like, or you just lived your life to the fullest. And it's interesting, isn't it, that it's perspective. And this is what I love about your work, your perspective on change and how you've made a career almost out of change as well. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like we are here. We don't know how much time we're going to have. And my philosophy definitely, I'm trying to think of when it started to be intentional, because it was it wasn't very intentional. It was just the way I was living my life.
Okay.
But it was definitely an energy of like leave no stone unturned, kind of. Like if there was something to do, I was like, well, let's just do it. Let's just like, why wouldn't I do this? Like starting in college, I had the opportunity to do a student teach abroad, but
Okay.
it was a significant cost, and I was funding myself, and so I almost didn't apply because it was going to be so much money. But then I said, you know what? I'll just go to the interview and I'll hope that they give me a location that will be cheaper.
Okay.
But then in the interview, I told them where I really wanted to go, which was South Africa. And then they assigned me to South Africa. So then that was a turning point moment in my life where it was like, okay, are you going to do what it takes to make this happen? Or are you just going to say, oh, no, thanks, I can't do that.
Oh,
And I can't tell you that everything in it was just like, well, I just got to make the money to go. Duh. So I've definitely been kind of born like this. And that was the start. And then I think once you have an experience like that, where you're like, well, yeah, I went home and I made $3,500 in 2 months and I sent myself to South Africa at 21 years old, then
amazing.
life just becomes like, well, why would I not live the rest of my life like that? That's kind of how I am.
Amazing. Amazing. And I mean, you've done 2 TED Talks, Dylan. I mean, how cool is
TEDx talks.
that? TEDx Talks, but
I would love to get on the
still,
TED stage, but yeah,
yeah,
no,
but
it was
still, and they
a bit
were
of fun.
brilliant. They were so good. And one, I mean, in both of them, you talk about how you lived 3.5 decades a certain way and then made that change, and then how you adapted. And it was interesting to see the response of others, wasn't it, when you made that change?
Yeah.
So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, when I did those talks,
Yeah.
the shit hadn't quite hit the fan yet.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely initiated a gender transition at 34 years old, and did that with support uh, of the people in my life at the time. They told me that they would support me. But then when I actually started to feel the physical and mental, sociological, psychological impact of the change that I'd initiated, and you and I were talking about this earlier, people started to fall away.
Right.
The support was not there. And what also started to happen was I started to become blamed for why they couldn't support me. And this was way too, I mean, it was all happening as a blur.
Okay.
I was also well ahead of the cultural curve of people transitioning. I mean, I was certainly wasn't the only person, certainly wasn't anywhere near the first. There were people, but this was before where we are now.
Yeah.
So I was bearing the brunt of the cultural awakening around this. But the very personal impact was people in my immediate life. And that actually contributed to my intense burnout,
Right.
if that's the topic. Because I went from being super popular, super happy, super excited about this change. But when family, I wasn't too surprised about my family of origin changing and not supporting me. But it was friends, and actually the person I was living with at the time who pledged that they would stand by me and then didn't.
Right.
And that was very, very hard. And then I had my business as a coach up and running at that point for 4 or 5 years. So I felt this incredible pressure to maintain a positive attitude about what was the dismantling of my life. I mean, I could keep going, but and then also trying to fulfill this dream that I had about being a speaker and being like, I wanted that. I wanted to be on stage, but then I started to see over time opportunities I was getting was because I was being tokenized and being kind of forced to talk about my identity when that wasn't how I wanted. That's not what I wanted my story to be.
Yeah.
But so this all was just happening as kind of a perfect storm of kind of the way things were. But it did contribute to incredible burnout. By 2016, I reached a real dark place where I was like, what have I done? I've completely broken my life. What is going on?
And
Right?
it's
Personally and professionally. I just felt like I had taken this jump that I thought was only going to make my life better. And both personally and professionally, that was not what things felt like at all. But you wouldn't know that because I was still trying to be super positive and still, and throwing myself up on stage and trying to help people because down deep, that is what I wanted to do with my life. And I thought, no matter what happens to me, I still got to get up and help people. And I still feel that way to this day. Like no matter what happens to me, I still feel a responsibility to encourage people to keep going because I just think that's what we need to do.
yeah. Oh my goodness. When you were talking, like I felt that in my chest, like it's that like, oh, because it's so hard, isn't it, Dillan? And I'm sure there'll be people listening to this who can resonate, where you're just trying to make something better. You're taking those strides forward because you're like, this is what I want, and this is how I want to change my life for the better. And I've definitely been in there. But it's exhausting because it's like we're not caring for ourselves, and it's exhausting to see the landscape around you shift and change. I certainly know, and I've seen firsthand where you just start to see people fall away. And I think when you have that exponential growth, which is only natural in life, isn't it? And kind of, as a mum to two teens, I'm kind of going, you know, you want to keep growing, you want to keep changing, you want to keep being true to you. You don't want to stay just this in this box. But it's not easy for people around us when we do that, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. Yeah, people, because I'm thinking about why. And it's just my conjecture, because I don't know, but I think because it really challenges them.
Yes.
Our evolution challenges them. Are they going to keep the pace with us? Are they going to, it really reflects a mirror back to who they think they are, how they're living their lives, their values, you know, like us really going for it, and us really, you know, it's like people are either going to feel, and that's what I've definitely seen as a result of my transition, because I can compare what life was like before.
Yeah.
34 years. I mean, it's not like I did this as a youngin, you know, like 34 years, I can compare how people spoke to me, how they treated me. And now, you know, 10 years now it's been, I forget what date it is about that. Yeah, 10 or 11 years, you know, and I every day I live watching and comparing like the difference of how people treated me before and now. And at first it was very painful, and I refused to accept it mentally. I was like, this cannot be my reality. People cannot be talking to me like this. I can't believe it. Like, I literally couldn't, you know, accept it. But now I'm acclimating, I'm adjusting, I think. And no, I am. And it really does test people. It tests people when you're living your life fully. People are either going to be very inspired by it, or they're going to feel very confronted and threatened by it.
Oh my gosh, you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what happens, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's discombobulating. When it happens, because you're putting all that energy and effort. If we look at burnout recovery, you know, once you do that initial kind of like, oh, I've got to hit the pause button, and you kind of physically just recover, then comes those steps of walking back home to yourself, as it were, your true self, like, you know, that kind of growing and, you know, ever changing, but that soul inside you. And it's so discombobulating to look around and go, hang on a minute, I didn't think it would be you. Because as you say, you have people in your circle, whether it's work colleagues or family or friends or whatever. And I think you kind of have people that you're like, I don't know, I think this will be difficult. This will be, as I do X, Y, and Z, I think this might kind of, we may lose touch. I don't know. We may just kind of drift apart. Mm-hmm. But I was shocked at the people in my circle who I was like, oh, wowzers, I didn't think it was you.
Totally. And like the lack of empathy, the lack of patience, like the lack of, but then, you know, what I've learned in my reflection, because I've reflected on this a lot, is people cannot relate to what they don't know. And part of the work that I've really tried to do in really actually turning the volume down on my transition, because what I started to feel was that people would say like, oh, you must be so inspiring to transgender people. And I was like, actually, I'm not. And I also don't want to be. I want to be inspiring to everybody. But it was very interesting because people would feel like they couldn't relate because they hadn't gone through a gender transition. And I was like, well, why don't you just listen to the relatable themes of, and it wasn't even about my gender transition. It was also about being an entrepreneur. And maybe you can relate to this too. Yes. That is also a very lonely, challenging thing. If the most of your friends, and that was another thing that I noticed about my particular experience, was not only having already been an entrepreneur for 5 years and the struggles of that.
Yeah.
But then I put the gender transition on top of that. And the two of those combined, and then I can see now nobody else in my life was they were maybe doing one, but they certainly weren't doing both.
Right.
So anybody, I could try to find to relate to, they couldn't relate to some aspect of what I was trying to do. And they couldn't, does that make sense? So I was just like, I'm alone. Like, I couldn't find any peers who could talk about like that overlap, because entrepreneurship, can you relate, right? Like if you haven't read it, you do not know how it is.
No. And it's very hard to straddle the line of entrepreneurship. Okay. Like, because we kind of go down this path because we have a mission and we want to, change kind of the constructs of how we do this, right? I really struggle between being that tyrant boss that I used to have and being really hard on myself, and kind of letting up and letting the flow of work naturally and trust myself. Okay, so for example, today I had this mission in. I was going to get up, I was going to do my elliptical trainer, and then I was going to do this pod script, and then I was going to do this and this. And I got up and I was just like, oh, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. Like, it's going to snow here. I'm in Canada, it's going to snow soon. I'm like, oh, here we go. And so normally I would be like, oh, I've got to do this. But I knew that if I sat down and made myself do this podcast script at my desk, it wasn't going to be true to me. It wasn't going to have any the magic or the energy, and therefore it's not going to end up resonating with someone. It's just going to be that marketing machine stuff, which I hate. So I actually went for a walk along the river path, 8K. It was great. Came back and I was like, oh, here we go. I'm back. But it's hard to do that. And we don't have anyone to kind of talk to say, don't worry, have a go at doing this. We don't have those co-workers to bounce off, do we? So I know how hard it can feel. Yeah.
Totally. So, right. So we have to be our own source of that. And that goes back to what you were saying about the burnout. It's like, if we're not feeding ourselves and filling our own cup, and we're only giving it out to other people, like, well, where's it going to come from? Where's the inspiration? Where's the passion? It can only last for so long.
Yeah.
When we have to be it for ourselves and for others, there's just nothing. Where does the refill come from? Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Good for you, by the way. Great job doing that today.
I'm getting, you know what? It's practice, isn't it?
It is
practice, because it's only doing that, say 12 times, that you go, oh, actually, this is what I need to do. I know if there's someone out there listening going, oh, those first few times of doing it, circle clap, well done, because it's hard to do. It's hard to remember that you're going to feel better afterwards. It's hard to remember that that is what you are craving right now. Some nature, some fresh air, a bit of exercise. You're not going to do your best work if you're literally there with a whip going, come on, do this. It's just not going to flow. Whereas sometimes, it'll be 11 o'clock at night and I get a great idea and I think, you know what, I'm going to sit and do this. And I love it, Dillan. And I love it. And I feel like I'm in my glory. But as an entrepreneur, it's very hard to tune into those flow states, I guess. Knowing when to stop, knowing when to start. It's, we can end up in this kind of tornado, I guess.
Right. Yeah, totally. Well, and I think that with the lifestyle habits too, right? It's like how to find that balance between giving yourself a break and not pushing yourself, whether it's around food or exercise, but motivating yourself enough to do those things, cooking for yourself, doing all the dishes, right? It's like, that nuance. But I've started to feel like that's actually like a beautiful place to be in, where it's like, I get to learn, what does that mean? Right? Every day I get to wake up and say, what do I really need today? Like, do I need this or do I need that? Like, because there's no rules. Ultimately, you realize there's really no rules. No one's gonna tell you what to do. You get to make it up.
Yeah. See, this is why I needed to talk to you. This is why I wanted you on the podcast, because you point out these little moments of because that just feels so lovely when you say that. You know, it's flipping that script, isn't it? It's not, doesn't have to be really hard and a battle all the time. It can actually just be, I get to do this. Yeah.
Because we do. We're so lucky. And I think that that's a thought that pulls me out of like when I'm feeling low. I just think, oh, but look, I've got this healthy, strong body. I'm going to go outside.
Oh,
Or, you focus on what you have. But I have to say to you, that contrast and that gratitude only comes, and maybe hopefully this will be inspiring to people when you've really been in difficult places. So for one example would be like when I was down to my last $500 and I was like, wow, I really don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. And you get to that place that everyone fears getting to, and then you realize, and then something happens where like a miracle kind of occurs and you're like, and then you're suddenly not there anymore, right? It's like you will never forget that time, at least for me. And so now every day that I'm not there, I'm just so grateful that I had that experience, because it created this contrast for me to be grateful. But I think when people are so afraid to be in those scary places, you never really then get to really appreciate joy. I don't know if that makes sense.
gosh, that's a brilliant, oh, absolutely. You shone a light on something really important there, because I think, and that's going back to, that fear factor, we're just living our lives. We're just doing what we can. And certainly right now, like the temperatures, oh gosh, it's a heavy world, isn't it? There's a heavy energy. It's a heavy world. Lots is going on for so many people. And I think all we can do is just kind of put that love out there, put that gentle kind of, take those forward steps, do what we can when we can. Yeah, I've always loved your positivity, because it never comes across as toxic, Dillan, never.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
how there are some people out there who, you're kind of like, oh, it just makes you kind of twitch a little. But your positivity, it's always so gentle and accepting. And I love how you talk about, if we were to go back to how, sometimes people, relationships in our lives, whether it's work, personal, friendships, whatever, when those relationships kind of fall away because of our exponential growth, I love how you don't kind of fan the flames of anger, frustration. You're like, it's okay. This is what people go through.
And I want to say something very important.
Okay.
What I put out is often the end result of me working through the opposite of feeling that way.
Oh.
And I very much want to say that what I share isn't how I'm always feeling, and it's not what's going on behind the scenes. But it's been in a very intentional choice and a very intentional change from how I used to be on social media, when I would share anger, frustration, judgment, and I didn't like what I saw, who it would attract. So I was like, I'm going to change this, right? I'm going to keep the fury, and I'm going to work through it all myself. And then when I can come out the other side, that is what I'm going to share with people.
Right.
Because I want to just be very transparent about that, because it's very important that people know that it's not unicorns and rainbows here all the time.
Yeah.
but I am intentionally, yes, sharing something to help people and to also make the world a better place, because I don't want to be attracting negativity and be a profile on social media that makes that fester.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's it's so important, isn't it, that we share our stories and we share that honesty, because I think that's what breaks down the barriers. Certainly with burnout, it can feel so lonely. And sometimes I certainly did this, but sometimes it's people's reaction to isolate themselves even more. because they're just like, you know, they're just trying to, it's probably a trauma response from childhood. It's just how they cope with something. But, you know, when you're in that kind of dark, lonely, isolated place, it's there's a lot to work through. And I think this is why it's so important that we're aware of coaches like you, people out there who, you know, because it's not necessarily something you can do on your own, is it? You know?
No, and you're coming up with like the best things, because I'm like, oh, I didn't want to forget to say this, and then you're prompting me organically that I was in that place.
Okay.
And absolutely isolated and retreated. 2016, 2018. I mean, recently, completely isolated. But the reason I was able to work through it was because I was a coach first.
Right.
And thank goodness. If I hadn't been a coach from the start, I don't know what would have happened, to be honest with you. But I drew on that training and I coached myself.
Okay.
Back to life, you know, and I do it honestly every day, starting with like what I shared with you. And so I just also wanted to be transparent about that. It's you know, that I know that isolating, and I am so grateful that I had skills and tools to pull myself out of it, but then also help other people too, because you're absolutely right. Without those skills and tools, that is a scary, scary place to be.
It is. And I that's what's so amazing is you're right. Like when you can equip yourself with this toolbox, it's lifelong, isn't it? It's, you know, it's amazing. And also as a mom to 2 teen boys, I like to think that, and any parents listening to this, you know, it's, you're modeling these skill sets, you're modeling these toolboxes. The ripple effect is huge. So why wouldn't we do it? And so, but once you have those tools, you can draw on them again and again. And, you know, it's always amazes me, because sometimes you can just feel like, oof, like so deep in the mud, in the trenches, can't you? But you're literally sometimes just 24 hours away from feeling a lot more hope. You know, as you say, get a good night's sleep, eat your greens, have a lot of water. Like, you know, put the bottle of wine down. You don't need that chocolate bar, and stay up.
That in too. And that's absolutely it. I mean, that's the recipe. And that's what I've learned is, you know, when you're in that place, just allow it.
Yeah.
Just allow it. But what I do, but you've got to allow it in moderation. That's what I found, is that when I just let myself have a bad hour or a bad day, and I say, okay, there's going to be baseline non-negotiables. We're going to drink water, we're going to eat greens, we're going to go for a walk, and then we're going to have some chocolate, and we're going to have a beer or some wine, and then we're going to just put ourselves to bed. And let's see how we feel when we wake up tomorrow. And I would wake up feeling better. It doesn't go away, especially during massive periods of grief, right? Like really intense times where that go on for weeks or months. But yeah, just allowing that, in time, it subsides. But you do have to help yourself out. As my friend Sarah, who passed away, loved her so much, she would say to me, Dilly, God can't move a parked car.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, same word, what you mean, Sarah? She would call me Dilly. And she meant like, we got to help it out. We've got to get up. We've got to do the laundry. We've got to, you know, we've got to make ourselves a salad when we don't feel like eating a salad. Like we have to help it along. And if we do, she called it God. We could call it the universe, whatever, you know, kind of then helps us along. I definitely believe in that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Huh. It's, you know, I mean, we're sitting here and we're being very honest, aren't we? I mean, it's not easy, but at the same time, just as we've both been kind of wading through mud in trenches, we've both had moments where we're like, oh my goodness, like, look what, I can't even believe this happened. You know, there's so much hope to taking those steps forward.
Yeah, the breakthrough happens. And maybe you agree, because the low was so low, the breakthrough feels even better.
It's true.
It's like, right? It's like raining for days, and then the sun comes out and you're like, oh my God, the sun's out. It's like, that's how it feels emotionally, right?
Yes. Oh, it's incredible. And I
Mhm.
think yeah, it's just taking those baby steps forward. But I love how you talk about like being in your own corner. Because I think, some of us, like, we're so good at lifting our friends. Those in our circle are so good at cheering them on and helping them out. But when we don't give ourselves that same amount of gentle, loving space, we don't kind of, we're harder on ourselves. Often it's an internal narrative critic that was never our own voice. It was a voice from, someone else. Maybe we heard it growing up, maybe we heard it in a workplace, whatever. It's never our voice, but it's a harsh one. And we don't gift ourselves that kind of loving, gentle light, do we, that we do for others?
Right. I mean, I think people, yes, I've noticed people are very, very hard on themselves. I don't quite understand it because I just think if there's no you, especially moms, dads too, or whomever, it's like if there's no you, the kids watch everything. I'm a former teacher. That was my first career.
Yeah.
They watch and they listen to everything. And if you're saying to do one thing, but they watch you struggling, that is going to be way more powerful than anything you're saying to them. Not you, but
Love
you
it.
with a capital Y. Yeah. So I just want to say the best gift you could give kids or anybody is to, yeah, lead by example and just say, kids, we're going to put our feet up and we're going to eat ice cream. We're going to watch movies today. That's what we're going to do because we deserve to just relax.
Yeah.
Or whatever the thing is, right? Like they're going to learn self-care. They're going to learn self-respect, self-acceptance by watching you do it.
Yeah, that's that to me, that's the biggest motivator. As a mom, I'm getting better now because obviously I'm on this journey and I'm trying to help other people do it. And so, it's becoming kind of my little practice now. But at the beginning, that was my motivator because I thought I never want either of my kids having ever sat in that dark corner. Like it would just break my heart. So I'm like, okay, come on. Like, let's change this. Even if I can just change it at home, if I can just change this, they're going to go out into the world and who knows, maybe they'll help someone. But it's important that we do this, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very. But also to, like we've been saying, to not be afraid of those dark corners because that's where the growth is.
Oh my gosh, it so is.
The overcoming that is the growth.
Oh, there's
We
a
can't. So yeah, but I like that's why I wanted to say, like I don't love that my life went the way it went. And there are many days where I miss my old life. I can't really tell you I miss my old self because that person definitely needed to grow up a little bit. um, but I miss the ease with which I moved through the world.
oh,
And I love my life now. And I love who I've become from the growth and the resilience that I thought I knew resilience before. I didn't really know resilience before, and how I can now help anybody.
yes.
I feel like I can literally hold space for anything. And I love that. I couldn't do that before.
It's phenomenal, Dylan. It's phenomenal. I just feel like we
I just want to encourage people. I want to encourage people to lean in to the thing that they're running from or trying to avoid because it will possibly, if you can be, and that's the whole thing, right? It's like, well, what if I can't? Well, no, but that's when you take care of yourself, because when you take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, you can get through anything, is what I've learned. And then imagine what could be on the other side of this thing that you're afraid to enter into. It could be an incredible, more incredible life than you're living right now.
yeah. Oh. That's such a lovely message to get out there, because you're so right. I think I'm just like that a little bit, because I'm kind of just come out of a period where I've had to sit in a dark corner for a minute and have a little look around. And so I'm fresh out of it. But it's so lovely to hear that, but look at the growth. Look at how much. And here's what's interesting, Din. I don't know if you feel the same. The more I go through life, the more I go through these periods where, oh, you're squeezed, you're like really squeezed in life, and you're really having to kind of face some truths and what that means to you and how you make the choices to go forward. I don't know, what's the word? Like, I feel stronger. I feel more rooted. That's what it is. I feel so much more rooted in myself that it almost doesn't matter the power of the wind around me, because I know I'm just going to sway as opposed to snap.
Completely hear that.
Yeah.
And first of all, I'm glad that you do feel that way. And you made a really great point that I want to reemphasize, which is, once you come through the squeeze, and I had a mentor once that called it that. So the fact that you just said that, I'm like, worlds colliding. But it is important to give ourselves respite periods. So it's not, what I've learned from my own life is like, it can't be constant change, because so much instability is, you said discombobulating, like that's actually not good. Yeah. So you come out of it, like you said, you just came out of the dark corner, give yourself some breathing time. Like we have to like reset, right? And then okay, and then we can take on something else. It's essential. Oh,
that's such a good point to make. Yeah. When you're in it, you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, and you're just trying to navigate this. But that's such a good point to make, because it's almost like you need the dust to settle. And then you can kind of go, right, now we're going to just do it with this approach, Yes.
Yeah. Almost like you said, like the point about feeling rooted, it's like we've got to get our bearings, right, to then be able to take on another change again. And when we have our bearings and we like give ourselves that rest, like you said, then we feel like we can take on more. And I think a lot of people don't let themselves have that rest time, that respite. Yes. So then they feel like they're constantly flailing. And I completely know that.
Oh, it's such a good point. It's like the mic drop moment for me, because, and I'm sure you speak to people, like for myself and for other people I speak to, it's that kind of fear of, oh my God, that burnout was so awful. It was life transforming, but I never can go back to that point again. And I think there's a little bit of fear there, but you're right. As we navigate these changes and we go through these chapters, if we gift ourselves a little bit of space, let the dust settle, eat ice cream for dinner, watch a film, we actually prevent that burnout, don't we?
Yeah.
Well done, Dylan. Well done. Look at you. You see, I said, I just want to have a conversation of magic with Dylan.
Yeah. And it was perfect timing. It was really perfect timing, because I've been through so many of those things. I think we have to have a certain amount of perspective to be able to. So I was going through it so much. I was still in it. I wouldn't have been able to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's true, because it's almost like you can only, I guess when you're in it, you're more likely to react as opposed to respond, aren't you? Whereas I think once the dust settles, it's like sometimes I'd feel like I was in one of those snow globes, and like you're just like, what the hell's happening? The world is like, someone is shaking me up in this snow globe. I didn't ask for this. And you're like, oh. But then once everything settles, you're like, oh, I got this. Whatever's meant to be will be. I'll keep going.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then once you've done that, you can do it again. It just happened to me a few years ago, just recently, where I thought, oh my gosh, my life is set. After years of being alone, I thought I found somebody, and I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. Nope. rug ripped out again. And I was like, at first I was I was very sad. I was very angry, all of those things. And there was just this part of me, or this voice that was like, well, we've been here before. We know what to do. And it was true, because I had been through so many rough patches, and I had gotten myself, I was like, we're going to just open up the rule book. We're going to open up, let's consult like what we know to do. And then that's what I did. And then you're fine. So I think there's that too. It's like, once you've been through it and you develop, like I said, those baseline things, you have a sense of self-trust that like you're going to be okay no matter what happens, which is awesome.
It is, and it's a real act of self-love, isn't it? Because you're not kind of berating yourself. You're not like, oh, what's going on and why did this happen? You're not doing that. You're just going, right, we've been here before. Get the book out.
Well, to be honest, there was probably a lot of both. If I was being really honest, it was both, you know?
Human, aren't we?
Yeah, it was a lot of the like, you got to be kidding me. Like, how have I not learned but also I can also see from the most recent experiences, there were just still lessons that I had to learn that were time. Yeah. And so I hope maybe that's a helpful frame for people as far as change is, it's really just life lessons. Yeah. It's not that we did anything wrong or that we don't deserve it, and we're not being punished. I lived in that for a long time, but it's just these life lessons that I had to learn. I thought I had learned them and I hadn't. And that's definitely on the other side of just the past couple of years. I'm like, okay, I got it now, hopefully.
Yes. Oh, that's a beautiful frame, because a lot of us can go to that point of, what did I do? It was my fault. As you say, I deserve this. It's just that kind of, you go to that place of fear and you abandon yourself and you're just harsh on yourself. But what a lovely, gentle reminder. They're just lessons. They're just lessons. This is why I teach my kids, like, don't worry, you'll never make that mistake again. Or, you've lived, you learned. But we have to do that for ourselves, don't we, Dillan?
We do. Yep, we do. We have to, they're just seeing them as like classrooms. Like, we're just constantly being moved through classrooms of life. It sounds very like, I certainly
like that. No, I like that.
No, but it's true. And then when you've learned the lesson, you get to graduate that classroom, and then you get into the next classroom, and then that presents a whole new life, a whole new lesson that you have to, a whole new gate to pass through, kind of thing.
But the reason why it's important to love yourself and honor yourself and value your needs is because it helps you move through those classrooms. So we're not in the point of fearing anything. We're just in the point of, taking one step in front of the other.
Absolutely. And to your point that you've made multiple times, because then as people fall away, because they will, right? Because they maybe want to stay in that classroom, if we want to stay with this analogy, and we have to move on to the next one. If we're on our own side and we're always taking care of ourselves, it doesn't really matter who comes and goes.
Yeah.
Because we've got us. And you've probably also noticed this too. In the next classroom, we get a whole new bunch of friends.
Absolutely. And there's nothing better than connecting with someone who's like-minded. Because, it's the same thing. Like, we just grow. Sometimes I think, oh my God, like who I was 5 years ago, it's like a million lifetimes away. And so it's lovely when you go into the next classroom, you're like, oh my goodness. I get you. I see you and I get you. And that's lovely to have that connection, isn't it?
Yeah. And those people, like, we're a case in point, like we found each other at a certain time. And then even all these years have gone by, and look how we're doing this now, like the divine timing or the perfect timing of this, even though we've known each other and we've been on each other's radars for so many years. It's like, this is the right time for this conversation, and the right people for us can't find us until we get to that right place.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. So that's why we just keep on doing the work, living our lives, putting the good out there. Oh, Dillan,
taking care of ourselves, and always taking good care of ourselves, because that helps us really, that's really, the linchpin.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it can become cerebral or intellectual, like the willpower of setting goals, and like that's all up here, but the actual ability to do it, to feel like you can do it, starts with how good you feel.
Yes.
And that's the greens, that's the water, that's the sleep, that's filling that tank.
Yeah. It's so true. And I love how you point out it's free. Sleep is free. Like, yeah, how lucky are we to have access to clean water? And it's those real kind of core moments of life that we don't want to take for granted. It's very easy to get swept up in that kind of Western world. The leaves are like blowing all around you, and it's very easy to kind of go, oh, there's this and this and this, but actually, what do you need? Like, tune into yourself, listen to yourself. I can remember really panicking when I first really burnt out badly, and just thinking, like, how can I not earn? Like, how can I quit my job and not earn? Like, but I can't physically get at my desk. There was, like, literally my body was taking me down because I was just not listening to it. And I can remember just, my husband saying, like, we're not going to be all right if you don't. And it's true. You're kind of like, oh, I'm not. It's, we have to really listen to ourselves and listen to those warning signs. Our bodies are incredible, really, for that, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yep. I know, but it's terrifying. And that's, it takes a real act of courage and self-love to hear it and then honor it. Right? To say, well, this is scary, and I know it's the right thing to do, even though it feels like the last thing that I could do or should do. I absolutely need to do this. Many people will not make that decision. They'll override that.
Okay. Okay. Oof. Oh my God. I knew we'd get deep, Dylan. Like, can you see? I'm like,
I don't know how else to be. I know. Well, and I'm so grateful for you. I really, because when you reached out and I was like, wow, this is the perfect time for me to have this conversation, and you're the perfect person to have this conversation. So I felt so grateful and so lucky preparing for this today, because I thought, wow, what a, you are the person who could have this conversation right now.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just know that with every episode I record, I'm always, my main goal, I just want it to land in the lap of someone that's going to help. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were asking, like, metrics and downloads and this, that, and the other. And I was like, you know what? That's not me. Like, and they said, why are you doing this podcast? What's it to promote? And I'm like, no, just to help someone who felt as shit as I did. There's going to be someone out there that hopefully this lands in their lap, and it's going to be like that one sentence, that one kind of little touch point that they're like, okay, I'm doing it. And so I feel like there's been so many of those in this chat so far.
I hope so. I share your same feelings. I really chased that dangling carrot and got to the point where I realized there's no there, right? As far as the metrics and the thing, and that contributed to massive burnout for me too, because I was trying to compete on stage. As I realized I was trying to compete in this circus that was created for and by, no offense, which I know you won't take any, like cisgender, straight white people. And here I am trying to play by rules where I'm clearly not included. And if I was to be included, it was only as long as I let them exploit my identity, which I'm happy to share, but it can't be the whole thing.
No,
right? It's not all of who I am. It's not all of my story, whatever. But I started to see, it was like and then I was internalizing that on myself, and I was like, oh, this is a bad situation. But then it was such a great breakthrough for me to be like, I don't want to play this anymore. Like, you all are doing this among yourselves. I'm just going to back out. I thought I wanted this, but I do not want this. It took me years of trying to chase that dream. That I realized I was never going to be successful at, But also I started to realize not a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
Right. Or feel the way like that you feel, right? Where you're just like, I'm not even trying to do that anymore. I just want to help people.
Yes, absolutely. And it reminds me, I can't remember which Instagram reel it was, but you were talking, you do these brilliant Instagram reels, Dillan. Anyone listening, go and follow Dillan on Instagram, because you do these brilliant be yourself moments, and they're so lovely and they're so enlightening and gentle, and just you just hit the nail on the head beautifully. And in one of them you said, oh, you know what, it was the one about the wallet. It was the one about the wallet. You found a wallet and you were like, you weren't going
Remember
to
everything. You really watch everything, don't you? I'm like, that was really good.
And I remember, I'm going to turn the light on. It's gone dark in the room now, hasn't it? I remember, yeah, you found a wallet and you were able to locate the person via Facebook, and they came and they were like, oh, let me give you money. You're like, no, because this happened to me. I'm just paying it forward. It's all good. And I remember you saying in that you were abundant, you had an abundant life in so many other ways, and you said, but I don't go by those typical success metrics. I can't remember the term you used. And I think that's the switch, isn't it? Because that hustle culture, it was so much about like how much you're going to earn and how many likes you're going to get. And like, if you think when we first met 2017, that was like rife, wasn't it? For me anyway. And now I couldn't be further from that. And I think you're the same.
Yes. I love that we're having this conversation. I really do. Because my gosh, it made me, I hated social media. It made me not want to talk. It made me not want to, I had a breakthrough about a year and a half ago, I guess, where I was like, you know what? I honestly don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Meaning I don't care what happens or what doesn't. I just want to turn on this camera and I just want to like what I'm doing again.
Yes.
And then exactly. And I want to help people. I want to like what I'm doing and I want to help people. Just like you said. I love that you just said that. I just totally, because you realize that there's no there. You realize that was something that was created, that it's like, yeah.
Yeah, it was just this kind of like aggressive energy, and I've never been like that. When I look at how I was as a kid, I was never into that, and I don't know how I managed to find myself in this kind of tech startup sector, like that's not me. And so, this is where, and I mentioned to you when I first reached out an email, like, when you burn out, like I think there's a real misalignment with kind of your own values and what you want. And it's very easy. There's no judgment. Oh my gosh, did I do it? And I did it to great extent. But the minute you kind of go, hang on a minute, like when I work with people, I'll often get them to look at their values, because I think that's the biggest clue to their burnout, that they've been living a life that is not in alignment with their values. And you must see this with your clients too.
Absolutely. People come to me and they often, like they either don't know, do they not know? They don't feel like they have enough support. They can't be that person for themselves. So they do need additional support to say, you can be whatever the heck you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. You can have whatever you want to have. You need that additional support.
Is that
right, because they get, say it again.
It's that permission slip, isn't it, Dillan?
It is that permission slip, because like you said, they lose track of their own values because they're so inundated with society's values. And the same thing happened to me, and I thought I was impervious to it, but it happened with that, like, oh, I want to be a speaker, so I like have to do all these things with these metrics, and I got completely misaligned, completely, in this desire to be accepted, this desire. I kept trying to overprove, overstrive, completely lost my authentic self. I mean, just forget it.
But I'm going to say I've watched, and I watched them recently again because I knew we were going to have this talk. Your TEDx talks, oh my gosh, you're as authentic and as amazing and shining bright as you possibly can. That like, so just, I want to say that, throw that back at you. You stood on that stage and you were you, and you were amazing.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And I just want to say to people who watch, I did that amidst total crisis.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Some of the best work I've done was when I was totally in internal crisis, but I was like, well, I'm just going to get myself dressed and I'm going to get up and I'm going to try to help people, which would pull me out of the crisis.
Wowzers. You know what? You're not the first person that I've spoken to where they achieved something incredible. And I've gone, what? You were like in crisis at that point, but look how shiny you are. So there's got to be something to it that, as you say, from those dark corners, we really do rise up. There's an opportunity to really rise up and show our true selves.
Absolutely. And for me, it was to be of service. It was to help people. That's what pulled me and continues to every day. And I want to encourage that and encourage people. When we get so self-absorbed, meaning, right? So like, I want to say pity party, but I don't mean to sound in a negative, but I'll claim it, right? Like when I get really like, poor me, you know, I get lost. And then the minute I'm like, okay, why don't we just try to help somebody? Remember, it's not just about you, Dillan, right? And then that pulls me out of it.
Yes, because there's nothing, oh my gosh, don't you just love it when you get like a DM from someone where they've listened to something you've said or done, and or they've said, you know, how did you know? That's exactly what I'm doing right now. And I'm like, because I'm walking that path with you. Like, but it's that lovely connection, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, and like your message to me, right? It's like, I could have been having a horrible day and then I made that reel and then you're like, hey, want to have a chat? And I was like, oh, I'm so glad I made the reel. You know, it's like, it just all happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen. Right. And that when you help somebody and that they tell you that you help them, you instantly feel better. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that reciprocity factor as well. You know, if we go back to the wallet situation, that person you found that wallet, they're going to find someone's wallet, they're going to do the same. And right now we need as much kind of love and kindness and respect in the world as we possibly can get, because it's pretty unsettling, isn't it? And but there are like amazing hearts out there, and we have to kind of look for those and see those.
Yeah. And like you said, in an authentic way, not in toxic positivity way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's what I love about your messaging is it's not the toxic positivity. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't really, I mean, I think it resonates with people who are at that level.
Right.
But for people who are really craving the real thing, you know, they're looking for like to really talk to me, you know. And so I'm glad to hear. I'm glad if it ever gets that way, you better tell me. Keep me honest.
I don't think you could be any other way, Dillan. There's no chance you could even do it. I'm sure. But it's such a positive place to kind of, such a positive source of hope and kindness. And as I say, like, you know, regularly, you know, you say that, you know, to sit and look at the anger and the resentment that maybe shows up in your life, and you say, like, what's the lesson it's teaching me? I can remember when I read that once and I was just like, oh yeah, like it just really stopped me in my tracks, because I don't like to feel anger or resentment. So when I do, my initial instinct is to just like push that away. But you're right, there's a lesson there. So look at the lesson.
Absolutely. And it's very important that I do reiterate. I appreciate your feedback about how I'm coming across, but it's because I work through all of that stuff first, and then I share. So to not leave people with the impression that, you know, that I've somehow gotten to this point where, you know, like a whole lot is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, okay, I have the breakthrough. That's what I'm going to share with people. That's what I put out there.
Yeah, those are the best coaches as well, Dillan. because you want someone, first of all, I feel like you should go to the coach that you feel called to, like you feel like, oh, I have something, there's a connection there, there's something calling me that you can help me. When I've done that in the past, it's been brilliant. But I just, yeah, it's that kind of, that gentle message that you put out there, and the fact that you're just 2 or 3 steps ahead of people, and they're the best coaches to work with, because it's so real and raw for them. They're going to know exactly how you're feeling, because it wasn't that long ago, and they're going to know exactly what steps to take for, because they've just taken them. And those are, to me, those are the best coaches.
Yeah. I have to get better about, I think, sharing that. I'm going to tell you honestly, I think I don't share enough of like the messy part, and there's a good reason why. Because when I was doing that, I was experiencing a lot of people pitying me.
Okay.
And this is a really important point to make, as far as like what led to my burnout too, and how I overcame it, is they would pity me. And I think that has a lot to do with the cultural narrative about how transgender people are positioned in society and in the media.
Okay.
People were really confusing my vulnerability, which I was freely trying to do to be an example, right? Like you were just talking about.
Yeah.
But they were coming at and being like, all they could hear was the suffering. And they're like, oh no, poor, and I think that was that perfect storm, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I was like, oh, this is bad, because you're not hearing the inspiration. You're only hearing a victim, which is not what I'm trying to be at all. But it was almost like no matter what I said, that's what they heard because of the cultural narrative.
Yeah.
And now I was like, wow, this is horrible, because I was like, how will you ever hear me? So that contributed, I have to be honest, to why I only share the kind of like exclamation point at the end, because I was like, people can't hold the vulnerability. Is what I'm saying making sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But to me, it just reiterates that you were tuning into yourself, and you were just like, right, I'm going to take a step back, give myself that space, let the dust settle. To me, it just kind of highlights how important that is we do it, and how you are literally walking the talk, and how you will be modeling to other people. That's what we need to do. We can't always be on all the time, can we?
No. And we have to, we have to pivot, and we have to adapt at first. And I really hated that was happening. But once I took the step back and I was like, oh, I understand why people are doing this. I feel frustrated that it's happening, but I understand why. So then how am I going to adapt so that I don't quit?
Yes. Oh,
Because quitting wasn't an option. So I was like, I've got to just change the delivery, which is why I'm so grateful for you to give me this opportunity where I can really unpack all of these things that I've now been able to see in hindsight,
yeah.
it helps me make meaning from it. And then hopefully it'll help people, anybody who listens. So really, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. But I'm just sat here like thinking, like, the creatives out there listening to this, because it's so hard, isn't it? You kind of, if you step into the marketing machine, sorry, any marketers listening to this, I'm not dissing you, but if we go into that very traditional marketing machine of, you do this and this and this and this, and that's what's going to get you the reach and whatever, it's just so, to me, it just feels sticky. It's not authentic. It's not true. It's not creative. It's not that kind of soul-led creation. So what you've just shared, if I was a creative listening to this thinking, that just, it just helps remind us that, we can only do certain things, as you say, in seasons of your life, and to honor that, and to look after yourself, and to trust that you're in the right flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. That trust is tough though. Because the hindsight only reveals that it was, but doesn't it? The hindsight always reveals that it all happened exactly the way it was supposed to.
Doesn't it? Just like when you look back and you're like, think, oh, all the breadcrumbs make sense as to where you are now. And you're like, oh my God, I love where I am now. But I would never have got here if it hadn't been for all of those breadcrumbs. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that resistance to change, to things kind of slotting into place. If you can let go of that resistance, you're on a winning path. But it's so hard, isn't it?
So hard. The lesson I'm going to share with you, the lesson or the teacher that taught me that I draw on is Pema Chodron. Are you familiar with Pema Chodron?
Oh, no.
She's a Buddhist nun. She's a white lady that became a Buddhist nun. She's very we'll to put it in the show notes or whatever. But
Yes.
I've been studying with her for 20 years.
Mm.
And she has this great teaching of letting go of the riverbank.
Okay.
And we cling to the riverbank, right? But the river is like going on, and river metaphor for life, right? And we've just got to let go of the riverbank and just let the river take us where we're supposed to go. And that's what I visualize all the time. It's like, oh, the river's pulling me along right now. I got to let go here. And it feels like the last thing we want to do, because we're like, no, but I like this riverbank. I was just starting to get comfortable here. And I really like the view, right? But the river's like, sorry, next destination, let's go. And that trust to let go, knowing that it's supposed to happen, that we're going to be okay, the river will take us. It helped me so many times to keep in perspective that like this is supposed to be what's happening right now.
Yes, absolutely. When you think of a certainly unexpected change where you're like, what? I did not see that coming. And societal constructs, marriages, relationships, do you know what I mean? Where you're like, I have to stick with this. Well, actually, sometimes you just have to go with the river. Yeah, the flow of that. It's not because we can see sometimes change like that. We can see it as a failure. I've heard people use the word failure. And I'm sure you're the same, and actually no, you didn't fail, you lived it, and that chapter's going to close now, but another one's going to open, and it's amazing. But I know, and anyone listening to this, like, I know how hard that is to stand in that liminal space between one chapter closing, one opening, or thinking, oh, okay, let's make that step forward. It's not easy. It's not.
Especially when we wanted the thing, right? Like specifically, let's talk about a relationship or a job, right? Like we wanted or we needed that thing, and then that thing decided it didn't want or need us, and we're like, no, but wait, this isn't. And they're like, it's not a democracy. You know what I mean? Like that's what I was saying in the beginning. Like the changes that we choose are so much easier than the changes that we don't choose.
Yeah.
Right? We have a completely different relationship to it.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend about this the other day, and I just said, rejection is protection. Like, maybe this is not meant to be in your life. I know you really wanted it, but maybe it's not. And just the universe going, no, move on, something better for you. I know it's painful at the time, but if we can just kind of let go and go with the river, the flow of it might, yeah.
Totally. It helps make something very difficult make a little bit more sense.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about that, you use that word ease, like it's about kind of going through life, learning the lessons, enjoying, living it to the fullest. And I think you really embody that. And that's something I strive to do. And I'm in awe of people who do that, because it's a brave and courageous thing to do. Like, fuck, it's hard. But when you do it, there is a certain, ironically, there is a certain ease to that. Isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I just feel like, why wouldn't I? Like, why wouldn't I just use it up?
Yeah.
Like use up what I have. One of my greatest fears would be to be like 88. I have that number in my mind for whatever I think I said in my TEDx talk, or once I'm, and to be in a rocking chair sitting with like, oh, what if What if I had? I don't want to feel that way. I would rather be able to tell horror stories about how hard something was than what if I had?
Yes, no regrets.
No,
Living your
exactly.
life.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as, yeah.
Yeah. I would
Oh,
rather say, like, wow, that was really uncomfortable. That was really painful, but at least I know.
and oh, see,
Yeah.
that's why you're so wise, Dylan. I love it. I love
I
it.
appreciate you very much. I really
Oh
do.
my gosh, this conversation is so nourishing. It's going to really help someone out there today. We don't know them, but it's going to really help them. I hope they reach out to us and say, hey, that was a real good one. Please,
Absolutely.
if it helped you, reach out to us. And I urge everyone to follow Dylan, because I just love your reels. So be yourself. They're fantastic. And this has just been beautiful. That seems like such a lovely point to end on. I have been asking at the end of conversations all my guests, because we all answer differently, some quick fire, light-hearted questions, if you're up for it. So, Dylan, on your dodgy, tough days, do you opt for move your body or move the remote?
Move my body, probably.
Look at you. Very good. Okay. Bag of almonds or bag of Maltesers? I
You have
don't
to
need
tell me what those are. I don't really know what those are. Are they like, I think I know. I think I know.
chocolate, basically. Delicious chocolate that you like wash down with a cup of tea.
Yeah, let's go with that. Let's go
Oh,
with
okay.
that.
Well done. Ask for help or happy to hermit?
See, I am in my ask for help era, as the kids say. I'm in my era. The hermiting is my default. It's so easy. Asking for help is scarier and harder. So I'm really trying to lean into that.
Yeah, no, that completely resonates with me. It's something I'm practicing, but I'm getting better. The more I practice, the better I get. I'm just
Give
thinking,
me accountability buddies to keep doing it.
I'm just thinking I've got one friend who's going to be listening to this, and then she's going to text me going, no, you still don't reach out to me, do you, Flic?
Work in progress. I know.
Oh, right. Okay. And then lastly, what's the one self-compassionate thing you're going to do today that your future self will thank you for?
Having this conversation with you.
Oh, Dylan, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This was totally an act of self-care.
Oh, thank you. Well, honestly, this has been amazing, darling. Thank you so much for your time. I just know it's going to help someone. As I said, let's just sit and chat. I don't know where it's going to go, but I know it's going to help. And there were quite a few mic drop moments in there, weren't there? That was a good one.